Our survival depends on one thing. Gears follow orders. But I look at you and I don't see a gear. I see something more dangerous. I see a hero.
Jason, is there anything in this world that wouldn't be better if you put a giant chainsaw on it?
No,
Nothing
at all.
Cats,
nothing at all.
Bacon. I mean,
yes.
Hobos. Just
bake. Yes. I have many times wanted to just wade through a sea of hobos with a chainsaw. Also cats. Also bacon. So you can apply either or end of a chainsaw to anything and make it more awesome somehow.
Do you think that, do all the rest of those things also get chainsaws? And do you have to fight the bacon with your chainsaw in order to get a bite of it? Like you go into the dual mode from Gears of War?
I would rather fight off some of the grubs from Gears of War than fight some crazy homeless dude with a chainsaw. It's like, yeah, dude, here you go. And you know what? No, I'm sorry. I don't really have any change, but here's some water. Oh, my God!
Well, talk of chainsaws can only mean one thing, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the new Gears of War Judgment. And, man, it seems like we're getting a lot of these late-in-life system, like one last desperate grasp at getting a game out there games recently, Jason. Between God of War Ascension and this and a couple of other things, it's just like, wow, you guys are really just taking that, just pounding that shit into the ground, just, get one more game out there.
It really is like the last gasp. It's starting to feel like that, like, okay, you know what, we're not going to make some AAA title, but we are going to make a derivation of Gears so that the Gears of War 4 proper can come out on the Xbox 720 or whatever the hell they're going to call it.
Yeah. So this is, unfortunately, Gears of War Judgment. Unfortunately, we'll get into that in a second, but this is being made by People Can Fly, which kind of sucks because it means that they were making this instead of Bulletstorm 2, which is just heartbreaking. But
it really is.
This is the new Gears of War game. It is a prequel, as all of these last stab games seem to be, where you take control of Baird and Cole and a Russian guy and some chick, and you do a thing with chainsaw guns and locusts, and it's all happening before the main storyline. Woo! Gears of War.
Yep.
If anything, I could say that this story is probably the most straightforward video game story I've ever played in my entire life, where they're like, the first 10 minutes, they're like, we need to do this thing. And then the rest of the game, they do that thing. Like,
there's not a lot of narrative legerdemain or little twists in the plot or anything like that. There's really nothing to keep you engaged. It's as far as story goes, they're really not trying to break new ground here. All they're doing is giving you more Gears of War.
Yeah. Well, it's funny though, because like Gears of War 3, I've complained to Gears of War 3 before about there's a level there where you go where Cole is like hallucinating back when he was a football player, and there's a little like sub part you have to do that. You have all the stuff with Dom and his family and being emo and all that dumb shit, and you got Marcus Phoenix and his dad and blah. And for this game, it just felt like the entire narrative stakes were lowered to the point where I didn't really give much of a shit about these characters at this point. At least in the previous Gears of War games, they did a pretty good job of making them kind of these larger than life, like cardboard cutout. Even characters like Cole, who in the games, he spends the entire game like jabbering and saying stuff and going, woo, Coltrane, baby, he does that to not at all in this game, to the point where he could literally have been anybody. He could have been any character and it would have been just as good.
Yeah, it was almost like it wasn't even him, you know? It's funny because they start Gears of War and, like you said, they start off with these larger than life, kind of cartoonish characters, and then they started adding nuances to them, which, it's a perfectly valid approach to giving characterization to a guy, but I kind of have to grudgingly admit, as much as I like deep, nuanced characters, I kind of prefer riding the Cole train, no homo, a little bit more.
Well, you know what? One of my favorite characters, so this is a personal interpretation thing, but one of my favorite characters in the Gears of War games that I've played has been Baird. because everybody else is fucking serious. Oh, my family's dead. My dad got kidnapped. The locusts are killing everybody. Bear's always got like some kind of smart ass comment. And he's always, lipping off to authority and making the kind of crappy one-liner zingers and that kind of stuff. And like, he does not really do that in this game, to the point where, I mean, it seems like a weird thing to take two characters like Cole and Bear that have very specific personality traits and then tamp those traits down, because what you're left with is, I mean, at least in my mind, ostensibly nothing. Like,
right.
They're generic dudes. They could have put, anything, any character from any game in that cog armor with a chainsaw gun, and it would have been just as important to the plot, quote fingers, plot of this particular game.
I will say, Jeff, that is not the point.
Yeah.
Well, it's really just window dressing, and I don't know. I'm of two minds. A lot of times in games, I say, you've got a stupid action game. Why are you trying to develop the characters? Right. Or you didn't develop the characters, thus this is a stupid action game. Right. So I don't know. I'm coming at it from two different directions. But in this, it was like they took away a lot of the stuff that I actually liked, and they were trying to do something different. I get that. They were trying to have the story of this apocalyptic invasion, the undercurrent of it, be, a little bit of a character study, which, I don't know, that's bold, because you're kind of, kind of throwing out what brought you there to begin with. You're not dancing with who brung you, but there is still plenty of just stupid, crazy, adrenaline, blood-fueled action.
Yes, which is a perfect segue into that aforementioned blood-fueled action. So People Can Fly have really done, I don't know, this is going to be the sort of thing. I was talking with somebody on Xbox Live, I was playing this co-op, who really didn't like some of the changes they made here, but I liked them, like just the changes they've made to the core action here, I liked them quite a bit. And there's a couple, we'll go down the list here, but the most notable of which is that They've taken away one of the weapons. So your character no longer is carrying two weapons and a pistol. You're just carrying two weapons, which kind of makes pistols ridiculous, and you don't really ever use them for any good reason. But on the other hand, it does bring us to a point where you're just hitting one button to switch between your two weapons like you do in pretty much every other video game that mankind has ever created at this point. Thank you, Halo, very much. And they've also done, with the taking out of mapping the weapon select to the D-pad, you also have a single button that you just slam on to throw a grenade, which I'm pretty sure it's been a while, you guys, so correct me if I'm wrong. Honestly, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's a change from Gears of War 3. I'm pretty sure that Gears, you still had to equip a grenade to throw it, whereas here I found myself using a lot more grenades because I was just able to tap one button and you could just quick throw a grenade. Other than that,
I can't really say. I'm not coming at it from a perspective of a diehard Gears of War fan. I've played bits and pieces of all of them, played through the first one all the way. And I liked them. Yeah. I don't swear by them by a lot of people, but I certainly can't fault people for them because they're not garbage, by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, the little nuance, changes and things like that, those were lost on me.
Well, the whole thing, depending on what Gears of War game you played previously, what I will say about this particular game is that it is, like, you could really, to me personally, I really felt the streamlining of the whole process. Like, it was really easy to jump into cover, switch between weapons, throw a grenade, reload, do an active reload. All that stuff just felt extremely good. Like, by this point, they've got that formula down cold. Between meleeing guys and running back and forth and the way you move between cover, that stuff just felt as good as it ever has. Like, you could sit down, if you've ever played a Gears of War game or a third-person shooter, that stuff just feels perfect. At least it did to me. I thought it all came off really, really well.
Yeah, the action was visceral. The storyline, the structure of the game was very uninspired. I thought, it was mostly just, okay, let's get you to defend this point. Okay, now let's move forward a little bit. Okay, now defend this point. Flashback. Okay, now let's move forward to defend this point. But all of that stuff, all of the action and everything, yeah, it was really intense. It was just a series of siege sequences. And they do mix it up quite a bit. But by and large, that's really, what you're getting. But what you're getting is really good.
Yeah.
There's nothing novel or inspired by it. Again, it's just, oh, you like Gears of War? here's some Gears of War.
Yeah, and it's what makes it even better. And one of the things that when I first started playing this, I really loathed this new gameplay mechanic. But as time went on, I actually found it to be really awesome. Is that you have a series of unlocks for your character. You have a character progression, kind of like a Gears of or like a Call of Duty, but offline, where you're building up points to move up in levels and get these rewards. But a lot of it is based on each individual section of the game you get a rating on. And unlike a lot of games where when you get through there, they maybe would throw up a screen, tell you what rating you had, say, like, oh, you got an S rank or whatever. Here, there's actually a little meter that as you're fighting fills up to 1, 2, and then 3 stars. And those, like that.
Yours went all the way to 3?
Yeah.
Mine never did.
Well, we'll talk about why that is in a moment.
I was like, this must be broken. My stars are broken. I only got 1 star, like, ever.
I put in the Konami code before.
Oh, that cheater. The Game Genie.
Yeah, I bet you didn't know a Game Genie could, you open the Xbox tray and then you shove that Game Genie in there as hard as you fucking can. It works great.
Dude, I'm gonna try that.
But, what's cool about it is that, like, as this it still has the system where unless you get shot with a grenade or you're standing on top of an E-hole, fuck you, E-holes, as long as you don't get completely pulped, if you get shot, your teammates can still come and revive you in a certain amount of time, so you limp back over there. But, like, when you die, it moves that meter back down a little bit. So you can actually go up to a star, you could lose it, you can go up and down. The problem with that is that I started to get really hung up on getting stars, to the point where I was replaying large sections of the game to see if I could get that little meter up to 3 stars because it was up there. Which made me feel really stupid because sometimes you would go reload checkpoint and you would go back like 30 minutes. I was like, damn it. Fine.
See, that's your perfectionism. I'm like, I have to go back by 45 seconds. No. This is all forward. Video games are about moving forward.
But one of the nice things that they added in there, was that pretty much every sequence in the game has this you'll come up to this big red skull cog on the wall that is essentially a modifier for each sequence. And it says, it's actually kind of cool because the way that the game is being told is all in flashback. I mean, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but at the beginning you come into this area and you're essentially talking about the events that happen. And so when they'll flash back to those events, and so you'll have these modifiers that you could turn on, and it's pretty cool because it'll say, you have to use locust weapons for this part, or you're limited to this, or there's a time limit, or there's a fog in there, or enemies are more powerful. And when you activate them, your character actually talks, like gives his testimony and talks about why that thing happened. Like if you choose one of the ones where there's a fog throughout the level or whatever, he'd be like, man, I don't know where the locust got that choking gas, but it really fucked us up, we went into this area, as if, modifying the story to account for this little extra added thing. Which is really cool. Like, and it added a lot of flavor because it would force you to use weapons you wouldn't normally use, or deal with tactics that you wouldn't normally have to deal with, or it would make things a little bit more difficult. So it was definitely a great way to spice up the single player campaign and force you to not just get in a rut of like, shoot, grenade, chainsaw, shoot, grenade, chainsaw.
Yeah. And the limitation of ammo really made you mix up the weapons quite a bit too.
Mm-hmm.
I would find myself having to shift and scavenge pretty frequently in the midst of a battle.
Yeah, and they've got I think there's a couple new weapons in here. I mean, there's a lot of the old favorites are back in. I kind of, for the first time in my life, I've learned to love the Retro Lancer because you could run across the map and spear people on the end of it, and that's pretty badass. I mean, I don't know if it's more badass than a chainsaw, but it's still pretty badass.
Yes. My thing with the chainsaw was that, I don't know, you really kind of had to prepare.
Yeah.
To attack someone with a chainsaw. You had to hold down B for a second and then hit them. I want a press this button and the chainsaw goes berserk and turns everything in front of you into Slurpee.
Call of Duty knife style, where you just hit a button, it's like, oh, bam, dead.
Exactly.
I even found myself, towards the end of the game, starting to get a little bit hesitant about using the chainsaw, just because a lot of the enemies would have a sword or a lancer themselves.
For those giant cleavers.
Yeah, and if you didn't, like, you would get into a duel, and there was a few points where I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm playing it. Oh, shit, I lost that duel. What? I'm fucking dead? Oh, come on.
Yeah, that shit can go south real quick.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I got this. I'm gonna chainsaw this guy. Oh, we're dueling. Okay, where's the button that I have to push? Oh, shit. Okay.
Now, let's see. There's also, in addition to it's probably 6 to 8 hours, depending on how fluent you are in Gears of War, the campaign here. There's also an additional campaign, which is a little bizarre, where it's called Aftermath, and you unlock it after you get a certain number of stars in the regular single player mode. And it's very weird. It kind of feels like DLC that got modified, like Gears 3 DLC, because there's a point in Gears 3 where Marcus Phoenix says, Cole, Baird, go get some stuff for me and then come back into the story when you've got that stuff. And this is essentially the side story of them getting that stuff. And it's about 3-4 hours long. It doesn't have any of the star mechanics in it. It doesn't have any of the modifier mechanics in it. It's a pretty straightforward thing where you go back to the place, Halvo or whatever it's called, where you were in the single-player campaign, but it's now in the time frame of the end of Gears of War 3. You have this little mini-campaign, which involves doing some really questionably stupid shit with a boat. Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. And it's fine. It's, I actually found that after playing through the game when I went to go play it, because it didn't have the stars on it or the modifiers, I was like, this is fucking easy. You mean I can use whatever weapon I want to? And there's no 3 minutes before everybody just dies in this level? What the fuck, you guys? This is simple. But it's like a little added. I mean, I just kind of consider it to be like some cool free shit that you get for getting the game. Like, it's not anything that's going to push the game over the edge into like totally awesome, but it's a nice little side thing that you get.
I'll never ever get to play it.
No,
that's like a lot of stars.
It's actually not that many stars based on the number of like, if you get to the end of the game, you get 1 star and pretty much everything. Yeah, I think you're able to unlock it. But then there's also the multiplayer, which I didn't get a whole lot of time to go through. I mostly concentrated on the single player. But Jason, you got a chance to play the multiplayer, correct?
I did, yeah. It's weird the way they break it up. I mean, they've got your typical stuff on there. They've got your deathmatch, and of course they're under different monikers to brand it as a Gears of War property. But they've got your deathmatch, they've got your team deathmatch. They've got your domination. I think it's actually called domination in Gears of War, where you control certain points, and then they have 5-on-5, where it's Locust versus Cog, trying to go after certain goals and objectives and so forth. And then they split off from that what seems to be, and I haven't played Horde mode a lot. I only played it a little bit, but it seems to be a variation on Horde mode. It's called Survival, where you play 10 rounds and you're protecting an E-hole against the locusts, and falling back every time it gets blasted. So you've got these 10 phases, and I think there are like 5 E-holes that you have to protect to keep them from uncapping them, basically. That is fun enough to just about justify the cost of the game alone.
Yeah.
It's a blast. And still, they keep it separate from the regular multiplayer matches. So it's listed separately on there. I don't know why. I don't know. But it's a hell of a lot of fun, and your friends will be pissed off at you, and total strangers will be pissed off at you, because there are some developed strategies, because you can pick from your different classes, like your soldier, your engineer, and so forth. I didn't realize until halfway through, it's like, oh, I can offer ammo. Here, guys, I've been carrying around all this ammo all along, and you guys kept saying ammo, ammo, and I'm like, I know! I need ammo too! And I'm like, oh, I just press this button and just ammo.
Since I just imagine you playing with the Xbox headset in your lap, and the entire time people are just screaming your Xbox Live name over, and you're like, you hear something? I don't know. I think I've heard voices, man.
Yeah, that's happened before.
Yeah. So this is essentially survive. I mean, it sounds like the rest of the stuff is pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
as far as multiplayer modes go. But this is essentially a replacement for Horde mode, right?
Yeah, that's what it's closest to. Like I said, there are only 10 rounds in the ones that I played. Horde mode, as I recall, was more like 30 or something like that.
50.
Yeah. Geez. Yeah. The ones that I played on here, and they might expand it or whatever, but it was only 10. 10 rounds. And, it was challenging. It was a hell of a lot of fun. But like you and I were talking about it, really, why would you have a Gears game without Horde mode?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand. I mean, even if this is, close enough to being Horde mode, why would you call it something else?
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think of, and you said it, is that because they're going to sell it to you later.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, it's weird because the other thing when I was looking at this was I noticed that there are only that for all of the multiplayer modes, and then for survival and overrun, which is the 5-on-5 mode, that there's only four maps for deathmatch and team deathmatch, and there's only 4 maps for overrun and survival. So it seems like if you were going to be playing, like if you're getting Gears mostly for multiplayer, it seems like that could get boring pretty quickly. Like those maps could get a little bit tired, pretty quick if what you're doing is focusing on the multiplayer in the game as opposed to, looking at it as value add to the single player or whatever, which I'm sure there are plenty of people who just focus on the multiplayer mode.
Yeah. And I really feel like, after I started playing the multiplayer, I didn't really give a damn about the single player, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm just not invested in that story at all.
Yeah.
And if I'm not invested in the story, I'm just going to want that action and excitement. And that is all found in the multiplayer in discrete little digestible chunks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to mention here, but I think that's pretty much it. You want to go ahead and slap a rating on this one?
I give it a full price. In spite of the fact that I have no emotional attachment to Gears of War whatsoever, this was a hell of a lot of fun. And again, I could see myself playing the crap out of the multiplayer segment. Just survival mode for hours and hours on end. Playing with strangers is fun, but playing with friends is an absolute blast. Getting all your friends together and say, all right, can we hold this off? And, just having a little, basically playing Alamo, but with grubs and cogs instead of the Texans and Mexicans.
Yeah, I think
Remember E-Day!
Protect your e-hole, Jason.
Protect your e-hole. That was the battle cry.
Don't let the locust of your e-hole. Don't let them in there. You don't want
That's
that.
the battle cry in Gears of War and at the bus stop.
Remember the e-hole? Is that
Protect your e-hole.
So yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you. I think I'm going to give it a full price. I mean, there's some stuff in here that's a little dodgy, but the thing is that at the end of the day, if you're jonesing for more Gears of War, this is a fine game. We didn't mention, of course, that the single player still has the full drop in, drop out co-op in it, which is great. A lot of fun. I was playing it and somebody started talking and I was like, who the fuck? What the fuck? Oh, I left my single player open. Okay. But yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun. I can see playing it on higher difficulty levels. I can see ratcheting up the challenge if you have more people. It's pretty much just as good as any of the other. It's maybe the story is a little bit weaker than 3, but I mean, it depends on whether you're coming for the story or the gameplay. I don't know. I'm just giving it a full price. I'll give it a full price. You've heard the complaints, so it's up to you now.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's Gears of War. So now I got to wonder what other games this generation do you think they can make a fourth one to try to cash? What other sequels do you think they can make a fourth game to cash grab on before the year is over?
I'm wondering if there's going to be another Halo type thing that'll be announced at E3 that they're going to churn out like in the fall, like right before the new the new console come out.
I think a Hail Mary for Mass Effect. That's what I want to see is Mass Effect, but then like some kind of subtitle.
You're back on that train?
Mass Effect Marshmallow Pony or something like that, right before the end of the year.
Oh, they had a lot of Marshmallow Pony plot threads left open in Mass Effect 3 that they didn't resolve.
Yeah, we've all been waiting, guys. Come on, BioWare, what the fuck?
I hereby charge Kilo Squad with desertion, cowardice, trespassing, the theft of experimental military technology, and treason. Does that sound about right to you, Lieutenant Baird?